Hi there guys, and welcome to another EDH Geeks video. In this episode we're going back to our set review of Commander Legends, and this is our part 2 here today, where we're covering blue and black. So let's get into it.
We start out with Tevishat, Doom of Fools, 4 and a black, foil loyalty planeswalker. He can be your commander and he has partner. +2, we get 2/0/1 black throw creature tokens. Then we may sacrifice another creature or planeswalker. If we do, we draw 2 cards. Then draw another card if the sacrifice permanent was a commander. So if we can find a cheap or somewhat less useful commander that we want to sort of get over and over again, that sort of has a good enter the battlefield effect or a good die effect, or if we can steal other people's commanders, which our ultimate can do, which is gain control of all commanders, put all commanders from the command zone into the battlefield under your control. So that -10 ultimate is very strong, and you know, with Tevishat's +1 and +2 abilities, since he's plussing on both his abilities, it's very good. Very strong. Just like having those little chump blockers is just fine. Like, and if you have, like, when you're building this deck, I think you're building this like the black sacrifice style deck. So I think you're going to have a lot of fodder sort of sitting around, and I like the idea of this being very powerful in that deck, because if you just like play him and, you know, draw 2 cards, you know, 5 mana to draw 2 cards or what have you, that's fine. And then maybe again next turn you can draw more cards, and it sort of lends itself very much to that strategy of, you know, it's just fine for the turn that it does something, and then it'll probably do something next turn because it's on a fairly high loyalty and you've got a bunch of you know, sackable fodder, so you don't really care that you're sacking all this stuff. You're trying to sack all this stuff for benefits and whatnot. But yeah, it seems quite strong. Then we're going to have
We'll have a look at 2 That's Will. Instant, 4 and a black. Choose 1 if we control our commander. As we cast a spell, we choose both. Each opponent sacrifices a creature they control with their grave's power, and then exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. Then create X/0/1 black throw creature tokens, where X is the greatest power among creatures they exile this way.
So just getting rid of graveyards is pretty good, you know. If somebody has something big and scary in their graveyard that you want to get rid of, that exiling all graveyards is not irrelevant. And it's an instant speed too. But it's also just like making people sacrifice their biggest creatures. So, and you can stack this the way it works, I think. I think you can, at least anyway. So you make people sack their biggest creature, and then when it goes to the graveyard, you're also making them exile it. So it's basically 5 mana to exile a creature, and then get X black 1 throw creature tokens, where X is its power. So that's pretty good. Yeah, I think that will certainly do a few things for your decks. This is making a lot of fodder for you. Does something, you know, it'll find a place in your deck. Profane Transfusion, 6 black. Two target players exchange life totals. You create an XX horror artifact creature token where X is the difference between those players' life totals. bit odd. I don't know whether you want to do this on yourself, but if you're in one of those weird life gain, life loss decks where you basically want to put yourself to 1 life and then make the opponent basically lose all that life, and then what you're doing is saying, oh, well, now you're on 1 or 2 life or what have you, basically no life, and I've gone back to basically 39 or 40 life, I'm just going to make this, 38, 38 or 39, 39, and then there's going to be curtains for basically everyone once I get to, untap and hit somebody with it, The nicheness of some of these cards and whatnot, certainly those decks that they can go into, they're going to be good. But when they're overall good, I think they're a bit better because then you can find more applications for them. Speaking of which, Court of Ambition is pretty good. 2 double black enchantment. When it enters, we become the monarch at the beginning of our upkeep. Each opponent loses 3 life. They discard a card. But if we're the monarch, instead, each opponent loses 6 life and they discard 2 cards. Now, this is really good. I don't like it specifically, but it is really good. You can just see how strong this is. I don't want to ever really play against it because what's the worst thing is just like getting hell-bent by your opponent's stuff and just sitting there and be just like, come on, bruh. Have you got a way to kill me yet? Come on. Just stop kind of dragging the game out. And, it's one of those unfortunate things sometimes where somebody just doesn't have a way to end it, but it's just so annoying and so slow. This whole, oh, now I have no cards, or I've just got a top deck and, so, you get into that whole, starting to look at your phone type thing. Oh, is this game over yet? Oh, what are you doing? Come on, please someone end this. Eventually you just go, look, come on, this has gone on for too long. Where's what's his name? Tiny Bones. Come on, end the game, and you're just like, oh, I concede I can't ever do anything that's relevant, and you're just like too slow to actually get anywhere with this whole strategy. I think, it just doesn't have enough pieces. It's just a really slow, grindy thing, and not anyone I would think would want to drag it out for too long. Elvish Dreadlord, 3 double black, 3/3 Death Toucher. When he dies, non-elf creatures get -3 until end of turn. He has Encore for 5 and double black. So, giving all non-elves -3 when he dies, I don't know about that. His Encore, when he comes back, basically he's getting 3 other copies of himself. So I say 3 other copies. I say 3 copies of himself. Logic, words, things. But anyway, yes, everything will get -9 when he dies after his Encore. So that's pretty cool. Well, non-elf creatures at least. So if you're against your friend's elf ball deck, you're a little bit hard up. But I just think this is a little slow, and it's just a little bit much to put into it. But there are certain decks I'm sure you could power this thing out, and just it's really good. If you could put it into your graveyard and you can somehow I wish there was ways that you could force your Encore to be cheaper. That would be really good. Then you're just like, or you could just like make 1,000,000 mana somehow. There's certain ways you can do that too. So, there's ways you can cheat this into being Encore and then -9 everything to be a board wipe. But I just think there's easier ways. But if you're in a sacrifice deck, or if you're in an Encore deck, this might make the cut. Opposition Agent. This card's had a lot said about it, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more said about it. It's very good. Some people have been speculating whether this card will see Vintage and Legacy play. 2 black, 3/2 flash. You control opponents while they search their libraries. When or while an opponent is searching their library, you exile the card they search for, and you may play those cards for as long as they're exiled and may cast them by paying mana of any color to pay for them. So very, very strong. Stealing your opponent's tutors. I don't like tutors specifically that much in Commander, but it hurts fetch lands. So it hurts you fixing your mana, and it also hurts people trying to ramp. Now, there is some debate to say that green does need a little bit of roping in sometimes in how much it ramps and whatnot, and there needs to be caps on certain things, and there's certainly some play to having certain cards like this out there. Just having somebody steal your lands for 3 mana, kind of a little bit of a dick move, I think. And I also think, well, the thing is, how exciting is it to get... Well, unless you're really far behind, I don't think this will apply. But again, I don't think it's that exciting to be like, oh, I get 2 lands, or whatever, off of a Cultivator or a Kadama's Reach or whatever. I think you want to steal something that somebody's really tutoring for. Like, they're tutoring for Grizzleband or whatever. They're trying to combo off with something. I think that's where you want this card. So I'm seeing this as a more competitive, sort of slanted card. I think it can see some other play because it's not that bad, because it's not as broken. Like, again, it has 2 toughness. If I punch into you with some big attackers, and this is all you've got, after you've stolen my ramp spell or whatever, or what have you, or stolen one of my fetches, having flashed this in, good luck to you. You're going to get stomped, and this thing's going to get stomped, and how good's that land now, buddy? Type thing. That's what I mean. Like, unless you get something really good out of it and you can cast it immediately, I just feel like in those playgroups where people have bigger, better creatures than you a lot of the time, it's like, if you get them before they get that sort of stuff out, yeah, sure, cool. But you've probably got to get a lot of tutors to get this consistently again. And the thing is, like, it does shut down your opponent, so you're free to tutor. You're just free tutoring. And then you're free tutoring off of them. So I don't like that whole thing that much. I wish it just said, for a non-land or something like that. If an opponent would search for a non-land, then you get their search. Yeah, I think in certain metas it'll see lots of play, but again, I probably won't be playing it, and I don't really want to play against it that much. Sengir the Dark Baron for black 4/4 flyer. Whenever another creature dies, put 2 +1/+1 counters on the Baron. Whenever another player loses the game, gain life equal to that player's life total they had as the turn began, and he has partner. So a bit weird wording there about how he works, and I had to double take there and reread that. But yes, I don't know whether he's trying to be Voltron, but he's seemingly trying to be Voltron-ish, I guess. He's playing around with life gain and whatnot after somebody dies, and if you 21 someone with the Baron here, with him, you're just gonna be able to, take a lot of their life, because, they're probably still at, 30 or maybe close to 40 life when they get hit by the Baron for lethal commander damage. So you know, you're just trying to make this sacrifice deck around him, and you could just go mono black with Tevushat that we were talking about earlier, because he makes the tokens and sacrifices the tokens. So you got, and there's a lot of sacrifice stuff in black anyway. So you're just like in this sacrifice deck, and all you're trying to do is Voltron off Sangyo, and the way you're doing it is not by equipment or by anthems or by anything else. It's just by sacking a whole bunch of stuff to make him bigger. It might do something, but then just that whole, you gaining a whole bunch of life. I'm thinking that a lot of these cards can work well together in the same sort of deck, like, what we're saying, Terrashet's Will or whatever. Just making an opponent lose a whole bunch of life, just like if you can drop your life total down while you're sacking your stuff, and also making Baron really big, and just keep making a lot of sack fodder for yourself. And then you're just like, okay, well, now I'm going to take somebody else's life total down to basically naught, and my life total is going to go right back up, and then I'm going to hit the other person for basically lethal on them, and then, gain all that other life. So now I've lost, nearly 2 opponents in the one action sort of thing. So now I have one opponent that's basically dead, and I can knock them over with, ping from a Blood Artist, or a couple pings from a Blood Artist, or what have you. And then the other opponent's not looking too healthy either, so I'm just like really setting you up to win the game. And all these synergies can work really well together, and I think it would be really cool in that sort of deck. Not my cup of tea specifically, but interesting enough for this strategy if you're looking to figure out what you're doing with it afterward. Rakashar, Debstar, 4 double black 6/6 cat demon. When he attacks, we put target creature from the defending player's graveyard into the battlefield under our control. And he has Encore 4/6 black. So he's just a steely. He's kind of Sepulchral Primordial, kind of, I guess. But when he comes back with Encore, having haste, stealing a whole bunch of things from opponents, that's kind of cool, and that same effect. But he's also good in the early game, just like if he gets a couple of swings in and whatnot. I'm not a big fan of this sort of stuff. I don't really like stealing stuff. I don't really care about that sort of stuff. But, if you're in that sort of deck and that's your jam, then he might squeeze in there somewhere. Alaramix Futilia Thrasher. I'm definitely butchering that. 2 and a black, 3/2 artifact. Legendary. Whenever he attacks, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature defending player controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control plus the number of artifact cards in your graveyard, and he has partner. So this is a weird, artifact commander that wants you to be playing all these artifacts that are sort of cheap and whatnot, I guess, kind of, that you can just sort of throw away but get back somehow later on in the game or whatnot. Or just something that does something in the graveyard for you that's an artifact, so that you can get benefit off of it somehow later on or what have you. There's certainly effects that you can still do with that. And mostly, I think they're mostly focused around creatures. So you mostly want creature artifacts. So you can get your grave diggers and whatnot in this deck and then revive them with your grave diggers and whatnot, so that you can, or not revive them, but, put them back to your hand and then cast them again, or then discard them again. But you also want ways to make those things artifacts, or you want to find the ones that actually are artifacts. Very interesting for a mono black deck, which doesn't really have very much to do with artifacts, or hasn't really had very much to do with artifacts. Blue has been mostly the artifact colour. Very interesting. I like all these like interesting like build arounds, but I'm not sure what to do with this, so I might wait and see where that goes. Necrotic Hex, 6 and a black. Sorcery, each player sacrifices 6 creatures. Then we create 6 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So we're trading in 6 of our things for some 2/2s. Can be good for us, you know, because other opponents are sacrificing quote-unquote real things. And if we have just a bunch of 0/1 thralls, or if we have a bunch of things that we don't care about sacking, or that we can sacrifice for benefits, or if we can recur, or what have you, is very strong. We can keep, you know, this whole sacrificing injured. And I'm like, that's where they've really taken black in this sort of set. They've just like focused in mostly on this whole sacrificey shenanigans stuff. And I think each colour has its own identity if you look into it deeply enough. Like red is really damage based and whatnot, and it's really cool to see that they're sort of going back to sort of the original flavour of what each colour is meant to be doing to a degree. Nightshade Harvester, 3 and a black, 2/2, whenever a land, ETB is under the control of an opponent. That player loses a life, and we put a +1/+1 counter on the Harvester. So, kind of cool. Again, it's sort of hating on ramp to a degree, or, you know, not hating on it, but hating on it more so. I like this version of hating on it, because I wouldn't care about, you know, taking 1 damage for playing a land. That's fine. I don't care about that. And this thing getting a little bit bigger, yeah, that's fine too. Even if it's a 6/6, oh, that's fine. If it hits me, yeah, that's fine. I don't care. That's fine. I might have some blockers, or I might have something else later on. Like, if I'm at 6, and this thing's bigger than that, then I have a problem. But, you know, like, there's still ways to get around that, and there's still things that I can do in the game to get around it. So I still think that it's all right and the game needs to progress, but I would think to say, well, look, you know, if this thing happens to be big enough and I happen to be going to lose to it, it might be like, well, yeah, you kill me, but what about the other 2 players that are sitting here, and they're still sitting in a fairly healthy life total? When are you going to be able to get rid of them without, you know, leaving me in the game? I don't know, you're probably going to sit in here for another hour or 2 just trying to ping them down, or just trying to force in your attacks. I don't know. Plague Reaver, 2 black, 6/5. Now those stats are pretty good for what this thing is, but it's sort of got this downside, but it's also got this upside. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice each other creature you control, and you may discard 2 cards. Sacrifice this Plague Boy. Choose an opponent, and you put the Plague Boy underneath the battlefield, under that player's control, at the beginning of their next upkeep. So it's kind of like this Zedrui hate card, I guess, where you're trying to donate all this bad stuff to opponents that they won't like, or won't be able to do much with, or will actively hurt them. Kind of cool. They've also gone down that kind of black route with, that route with black rather. Here in the set, they've given a black a few things that kind of do this whole, I'll give you this thing, which is bad. You know, kind of cool. I like that with the Grixis commander, I think it is, that works around that sort of thing. I think it is. I think that's the one. But anyway, very cool. Next, Keskit, the Flesh Sculptor. 2 black, 1/3. Tap, sacrifice 3 other artifacts and or creatures. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 2 of them into your hand. the other into your graveyard. And he has partner. I think this kind of goes into that black artifact deck that we were talking about moments ago. This is very interesting. This reminds me of that cleric from Dominaria that sort of does this effect where he sacrifices 2 other things and you can return things from your graveyards, but he's doing this from your deck. So it gives you more card advantage, which is really good. Whisper Bloodleaders, that was what it was. But yeah, this seems quite cool, especially since you're getting more cards out of your deck and giving more cards to your graveyard as well. So this just fuels more of your graveyard strategy, more of your, value plan engine, which is really cool. Miara, Thorn of the Glade, 1 and a black, 1/2. Whenever she or another elf we control dies, you may pay 1 and 1 life, and if we do, we draw a card, and she has partner. This is a kind of different way to take Elf Ball or to take the Elf Tribal deck. I think that this is cool because this gives you your sacrifice deck in your Elf Tribal kind of, which is, being dominated by sort of, I'm about to say Eldrazi, but, Crater Hoof and, what's his name? The green elf run, the guy with Overrun. Oh, man. The 3-mana one. Oh, man. I can't think of his name. But anyway, yeah, just this whole overrunning sort of effect that you keep getting. Like, it's one big way to do it, which, is cool. But the thing is, I think there should be flexibility in archetypes sometimes. And this just, like, value sacrificey commander for elves. Very cool, but I think you've got to find good payoffs for this. There's certainly a lot of them in black, certainly, anyway. So, you've got to find some good free sack outlets, especially, you want ones that produce mana when you sacrifice things, or produce treasures and things like that, so that you can pay the one, essentially, to draw a card for free, and draw more cards when you sack and get things back again. All this sort of stuff is happening with a lot of these decks where you're wanting these sack outlets, or you're wanting recursion, or you're wanting cheap things and whatnot to sacrifice and to be able to get mana and draw and, that sort of thing consistently with these things. Nada, Agent of the Dark Enel, Dusk Enel, rather, 5 and a black, 3/3. Whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on him. Whenever he leaves the battlefield, we create a number of 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens equal to his power, and he has partner. So this is really good elf ball style sacrifice fodder commander. So what we're doing is we're probably partnering up with the one we were just talking about, where we're trying to sack a bunch of things, put a bunch of counters on him. It's very reminiscent of the Orzhov Alendra of the Duskgrows, where we're trying to make him bigger. Then when he dies, we're getting a whole bunch of these 1/1 tokens so that we can keep sacrificing, keep our engine going, keep doing things, keep the pinging, keep, going. And I'm liking that they've sort of limited this to a degree, but it's also kind of, I wish it wasn't so limited to a degree as well, but it's kind of cool to have a more limiting factors to build around sometimes. But if you were building this into a more, or most of these into a more generic deck, I would want things that worked with every token, I think, or with every creature. More so. Tormod, the Desecrator. So, Tormod's Crypt has got a card made after it. 3 in a black, 4/2. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and he has partner. So again, we're trying to do this whole zombie tribal or leaves the graveyard matters sort of deck where you're casting things from the graveyard. So this is a great zombie commander, I think, for mono black. And, just gives you or even just in the 99, just gives you value from casting your vampires from the graveyard. And just gives you value overall in your zombie deck to give you more options. So, but anyway, I think that's most of the good black stuff that we've got for now. Rest, I think, is not very good. And I think even some of the other stuff that I was talking about wasn't that amazing, but still, I sort of lopped some of those rares in with the uncommons just to show how I don't think that could somewhat. But anyway, we'll move on to blue now.
Now, blue first is Sakashima of the Thousand Faces. 3 in a blue, 3/1. You may have Sakashima Thousand Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature you control, except it has the name Sakashima of Sakashima Thousand Faces abilities, and it says the legend rule does not apply to permanents you control, and it also has partner. So very strong. Clone refers to the original Sakashima imposter back in Kamigawa. Very powerful to be able to clone a commander that you control, because this has partner. You can say be in mono black, or essentially in mono black, and just be splashing blue for Sakashima and counterspells and whatnot. Being able to enter as a copy of a creature, a legendary creature you control, copy its ETB, copy any activated abilities that you have on your other commander. So basically, you're getting double of what your commander's getting, and you're getting a partner that gives you access to blue. Very strong. Some people have said that this might be a bit too good, being that has partner and being a legendary that you can just splash blue for. But I don't know, I'm not sure. It does seem quite good because you can get another commander essentially, but you're only going to get either a mono or another monocolor commander or another 2-color commander essentially. So I guess you could have 2 Timna the Weavers, I guess, or what have you, or something like that. But and now you have access to blue as well, or something, or you have access to somehow, if you have access to green, blue, and black, that would be probably pretty strong, because those colors are very strong. But anyway, there's things that you can certainly do with it, and I think if you're just going like legend rule tribal, mono blue legendaries, or partnering it with something else to go, legend rule tribal, basically, so that you can, stop having to figure out all the legendary rule with all your clones and whatnot, so that you actually get their effects and don't have to sack them and whatnot. That actually seems kind of cool, but I think the broken aspect of it sometimes, takes over, and everyone worries too much about that aspect rather than just focusing on what other applications there can be. And I think, again, if you're looking at all those broken applications, that you're always going to do that, and it's always tutors and whatnot, and it's always fast mana to do all this stuff that you're trying to do, then you're just like trying to be CEDH anyway, so you might as well just go and play that. So I don't know. Next is Sakashima's Will, 3 and a blue sorcery. This is a choose one. If we control a commander, we choose both. Target opponent chooses a creature they control, and we gain control of it. Choose a creature we control. Each the creature we control becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn. This can be very strong if somebody has only one creature. That way you're basically getting the one creature that you want to a degree, but a lot of the time, a lot of people are just going to have a lot of creatures and they're going to try and give you their worst creature. But if they have to give you their commander, maybe, then perhaps they might be a bit in trouble by having to give you their commander, and not being able to kill it or exile it or whatever. You gain control of it and it's permanent, so that's quite good. Making copies of a creature you control, this works more with your clones, and this also works with that whole legend rule tribal sort of thing. If you've got a bunch of legends and you have the legend rule not applying with your Sakashima, then you just get all these legends and whatnot of the same thing, or you can just get something big and beefy and scary or something that will combo off or what have you, that basically just wins you the game or can kill people very quickly so that you can go ahead and win with it. There's certainly ways that I'm sure that you can find ways to abuse this and abuse the modes on it and whatnot, but I wasn't able to think of any quickly off the top of my head and whatnot, but it does seem good for its cost. It does be restricted to sorcery, which is good. If it was instant, then I think it would be a bit much, a bit too strong. Mnemonic Deluge, 6 triple blue sorcery. Exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Copy that card 3 times. You may cast those copies without paying their mana cost. Then we exile Mnemonic Deluge. Getting 3 copies of any spell is very good. And it's any instant and sorcery from any graveyard, so it can be a spell we've put into our graveyard, or it can be a spell that somebody else has put into a graveyard. There's certainly ways we can easily win with this. There's certainly just very cheap sort of things that we might get, like just cultivate, rampant growth, things like this. But even so, still thinking, that's the the floor of it. You could get a bunch of counter spells, or you could get. It depends, because this is probably a very late game spell. If you can cheat things into your graveyard, and you're built around this, I think it's much better. I don't think you should rely on your opponents having anything super amazing in their graveyard. I think you should build this in a way that you're basically tutoring stuff to your graveyard, or you're milling stuff into your graveyard that you actually want to copy 3 or 4 times, and
then try and get some big, massive value spells off of this card. I think it's very interesting if you do build around it. I think there's probably some good options for you out there. So if you build around this will be quite good for you, I think. Sphinx of the Second Sun, 6 double blue, 6/6 flyer. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you get an additional beginning phase after this phase, which is untap, upkeep, and a draw step. So, at your end step, you get to untap, which is, Wilderness Reclamation, Seaborn Muse sort of level effect. You get to, upkeep. So trigger anything that's on your upkeep. So you could do stuff like upkeep tribal or what have you, sort of things. So if you find ways to get more things happening on your upkeep, I think this could be very strong as well with those sort of effects. if you can get even more upkeeps with the blue enchantment that actually gives you an additional upkeep, then you'll get two upkeeps, so you get more triggers off of your stuff. And a draw phase. Of course, drawing cards is one of the best things to do in Magic besides ramping. So, that's just very powerful. So you get to, untap all your stuff, have your mana open, get any additional upkeep triggers that you might get, draw a card as well. So you're getting, when you cast this, essentially you're casting it essentially to a degree for free because you're untapping all your mana in your untap phase. So this is a 0 mana 6/6 if you can land it and proceed to your end step and then get your post combat main phases and whatnot, and then get your upkeep, untap, upkeep, and draw. So it could be very strong to fit in, and it's a 6/6 fly. It's not irrelevant that it does have some evasion. If it sticks around for a while, it'll be really good. But again, I think you've got to have this in a place where you can sort of ramp it out really quick, because it is 8 mana, so you need a lot of ramp to get this out very quickly, and you also just need to have that whole synergy of caring about your upkeeps or what have you, I think, because just like Wilderness Reclamation, plus I've got a 6/6 body, that flies. I don't know. I don't know how good that is. I mean, it is good, but plus drawing a card, I don't know. It is strong, but don't get me wrong. But the thing is, again, when you're thinking about these turns of the game, these are the turns of the game where people are just flat out saying, I win, or trying to say flat out, I win, so I think you've got to find a way to basically have this basically almost win you the game by having all those effects around it. So anyway, next is Amphibian Mariner. 3 and a blue, 3/3. When he enters the battlefield, we exile one target non-salamander creature. That creature's controller creates a 3/4 blue salamander warrior creature token, and then he has emerge for 4 and double blue. It's kind of a acidic slime, except it exiles something, and it's also kind of like Beast Within, except it gives them a 4/3. But it is 4 mana, and it is sorcery. I think the Encore is kind of cool, but again, I think, there are good things like Reality Shift, so I think, and Pongify and whatnot, and Rapid Hybridization and things like that, so I would just run those. But if you're really struggling for some removal and you happen to care about Salamanders or Pirates maybe, or Encore maybe, I don't know, or you just really want this, I don't know, you can find a space for it, jam it in there. If you're in mono blue, maybe this finds a space, because you're always about removal, and just like anything that exiles a creature that's bigger than a 4/3 is probably relevant, especially for things that have indestructible or what have you, or protection from instants, and things like this. So this gets around things like that and whatnot, so could be good. Body of Knowledge, 3 double blue, star. Body of Knowledge, power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size. When it enters the battlefield, when it's dealt damage, draw that many cards. So it essentially makes itself bigger when it's hit or when it's dealt damage. If you actually can find ways to get this up big enough, and give it some evasion, it's really good. But just like drawing cards just on its own is really good. If you can get it above a 13/13 and just like Blasphemous Act, then I think you're golden. You're just like 1 mana to draw 13 cards or whatever, plus, you've got no max hand size, and this thing's still sort of hanging out and, gonna draw you more cards. So if you build around it and have like all these damage effects or what have you, or you're just always pushing it into into blocks or into attacks or what have you. That would be interesting, but it kind of reminds me of that blue flash creature that comes out, and when it blocks, it takes that much damage, and you draw that many cards. It kind of reminds me of that, except it doesn't have flash. So I don't like this as much because it doesn't have flash, it doesn't have evasion, but I think it could be good. Just for the fact that it draws your cards or pretty easily and pretty regularly. You just keep blocking everything with it. You have a handful of 7 cards. Oh, look, I blocked your 6/6. Okay, I'm going to draw 6 cards and my thing's still around. Or I blocked your 3/3. Okay, I'll draw 3 cards, whatever. And I killed your thing. So it can be good, sort of semi-removal to a degree, I guess. Or it can be just a deterrent for people to, attack into you or, block this thing. So it kind of has that evasion where people might go, oh, well, I don't want you to draw cards, so I'm not going to block. And then you're just going to be like, well, I deal, 8, 9, 10 damage to you or 20 damage to you or whatever it is, the number of cards in my hand at a certain point. So you need to be aware of how big it is, I think, as well. Court of Cunning. 1 generic and 2 blue. When Court of Cunning enters the battlefield, we become the monarch at the beginning of upkeep. Any number of target players mill cards, each mill 2 cards, If we're the monarch, each of those players mill 10 cards instead. So I'd like this a lot more personally in a self-milled deck. I want to mill myself for value. I want to find my stuff that I can recur from my graveyard. This would probably be really good in Muldrotha and things like that, and Sidisi and a couple of other great graveyard decks. I don't like mill as a, I'm going to win with mill strategy. Like, if you're trying to actually kill other people with mill, it can happen. And the new Bruvac and a few of the new cards like this one and the Jace card, I think it is, from Zendikar, have made mill a lot better than what it was. But I still think that it's a very, niche or just oh, wow, I can mill people, type thing. But actually, no, you really can't. Maybe you'll mill one person. If somebody's drawing a lot of cards, about swear there, sorry, but if somebody's drawing a lot of cards, then you might focus on that one person to try to mill them. That's been a thing that's happened here and there where I've gone, quick, he's almost out of cards, mill him, somebody actually has mill cards in their deck, but it's almost like no one ever has. So it's almost never relevant when it is relevant, but if you're ever with that player that's oh, draw 50 cards, okay, cool, I'll make you also mill, 20 more cards. Oh, you're going to draw, a few more cards, 10 more cards, 12 more cards, whatever, Oh, okay, I'll make you mill, more cards as well. And this just makes their deck harder to play when the person who's almost trying to mill themselves out is also being milled out, because they are looking for often 1 or 2 key pieces so that they can win off of them having no library, like Thassa's Oracle and, the new Jace from War of Spark Jace, I think? And the Labman sort of effects, so... but anyway, there's ways that I think you should take advantage of cards like this. This is my opinion anyway. And yeah, again, I just think, because again, there's so many graveyard-esque decks, or so many people sort of can utilize their graveyard, or there's just ways that people can shuffle their graveyard back in or get all the permanents back out of their graveyard onto the battlefield. And there's just the Eldrazi shufflers and things like this. I know people always complain about those things and say, oh, well, what if they have this 1 or 2 cards in their deck or what have you. There's the not Balaguet or whatever it is, the Geese's Recovery or whatever it is. If it gets milled into a lot into a graveyard, then you basically put the rest of your graveyard back into your library and things like this. So there's just lots of cards that are like that just say, oh, we'll put the rest of your deck, the graveyard back into your deck, so you never get milled out. Or there's cards that basically say you cannot be milled out. So there's just so many ways around it, and I just don't think there's enough answers that are in the colours of mill for the cards that actually stop it. Anyway, I think you should try and build around this for yourself. Try and get things an advantage for yourself. Don't try and just jank people out, I don't think. Unless you just like for funsies or whatever, I don't know. But not for me. I want to win with something. I don't want to just have a silly thing that sort of doesn't do that much. In my opinion, again. If you want to do that, it's up to you. But anyway. Elgareth Crossroads Augur, 4 double blue, 5/6 flyer. If you would scry any number of cards, draw that many cards, and he has partner. It's cool, legendary dude that allows us to sort of get a lot of value out of just scrying. Like cards that say scry to draw 1, like Preordain and or what have you. Ponder and things like this just now say draw 3 cards for 1 mana essentially, or whatever it is, which is just ridiculous. That's Ancestral Recall, so that's just pretty dumb. But again, this is 6 mana, so it's going to be a while before you get your big bird boy out, or your Sphinx boy, or rather. But your big flyer out there. So a lot of these quote-unquote cantrips are like 1 and 2 mana, again, as I say. So you want a lot of, again, ways to ramp this guy out as quickly as possible, because you want to turn all your cantrips basically into Ancestral Recalls and whatnot, just so that you can dig to find more gas and dig to find the things that you actually want to use to try to win the game. I'm sure that you're probably trying to combo off with this rather than janky flyers, beatdown, or what have you. So I'm guessing that the reason that you're trying to do this is to try to draw your deck out. So you're trying to find ways so that you can basically Labman or Jace or whatever, Thassa's Oracle or whatever for the win. So I don't know. But anyway, I think there's some homes for it. And if you're scrying a lot, I think you probably might just throw it in. As a scry commander, I don't know, it sounds kind of cool, just like scry tribal, I guess, kind of cool. There's some birds and some other stuff that when they enter the battlefield, they scry 1, or they scry 2, or they scry 3, or whatever, and things like this. So you could go with all those creatures that help you scry, or when you scry an additional time, and things like this, or whatever. Things like that you might find space for. So you're really wanting a lot of that sort of effect, so that you can just draw more cards essentially for cheaper than you've got to have it cheaper than than what you see out there for the other enchantments. That just say when you draw a card, you draw an additional card unless it's the first one you draw per turn, like Jace's Sanctum or whatever it is, the new one from is it Zendikar? I think it's Zendikar. I think so. Oh, no, it's M21. M21, that's right. Or the 5 mana artifact one that... that's the archive one. The... whatever it is, that one. Oh. I can't think of the name of it, though, but it doubles your life gain as well, and, So there's things like that. Those are basically both... the blue one's at 4 mana and the... colorless ones at 5 mana, so you want it less than 4 mana really to get good value out of it. Anyway, Hull Breacher, very powerful card, CDH card mostly in my opinion, but 2 and a blue, 3/2, flash. If an opponent would draw a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead create a treasure token. Someone goes to draw 6, you flash this in, you get 6 treasures. I believe that's how how it's been explained to me and how it actually does work now, this is pretty dumb. Pretty dumb. Just free value, all these free value cards that you often see, they just like span out of control. If you've got like a wheel deck and you're forcing your opponents to wheel, oh look, I spend 3 mana to wheel. Oh look, you're all drawing 21 cards. Oh look, I get 21 treasures. It's like the Smothering Tithe effect, except it's blue. So that you're just like getting this effect. So now I think like Smothering Tithe in the decks that it was in where you're trying to wheel, I think because a lot of those decks wanted to be blue, black, and red, I think for the most part. Now you don't need to have that, or maybe you really want that just for the added redundancy, I'm not sure. But now you need to be like 4 colours or maybe 5 colours with that, I guess. But again, I still think that this is a card, in casual play. And even so, I say casual play, I don't think exactly what I play and what we all play when we do play is exactly casual. It's competitive casual or casually competitive or whatever. But I still don't think that many people will play this that much. It dies to pretty much literally everything. It's just an annoying card that, again, has a huge target on it. So it's just going to get dealt with as soon as possible. And again, you're going to be heavily policed. So you're going to be the target as well when you're playing this in those formats. And when somebody's, attacking you with 3 or 4 5/5s or whatever, and then the next person is attacking you with 3 or 4 5/5s and whatnot and things like this, and the next person's doing that, suddenly this is not looking so good because, yeah, you've got a lot of mana, but now you're on like 5-10 life or whatever, and it's like, oh, great. So am I going to combo off and win this turn? Maybe not, and then, this has made a lot of mana for me, but has it been worth it because I'm probably dead next turn, so that's what I mean. Like, where are you getting with this? Like, that's what I mean. It's not going to be as good in these more, combat focused decks, and once you're the target, well, you're in trouble kind of thing, because you won't have many ways to block a lot of that damage, and your deck's not really set up for dealing with having all that being focused on you. You're looking for your 1 or 2 combos and whatnot, and if you happen to find them, of course you're going to win. But again, I still think a lot of those players will say, oh, well, that was a bit poopy of you. Please don't play that deck or play with us again, type thing. Go away. Or you've got to be arch enemy or whatever if you want to play, or what have you. Things like that. And so it just doesn't work out well for you, I don't think, if you're not playing it in the right area. Laboratory Dredged. 3 and a blue, 3/4. And at the beginning of each end step, draw a card if you've cast a spell from a graveyard or activated an ability of a card in a graveyard this turn. I was wondering if this works with Gravecrawler and effects like that. I'm pretty sure it does. It works certainly with Flashback and with effects like Jumpstart and things like that. I'm not sure whether Dredge is actually a activated ability. So I'm wondering if this actually works with Dredge, because that could be just like a weird combo where you're just like, okay, cool, I have a Dredge card, i.e. like Stinkweed Imp, right? In my graveyard. I'm going to draw Stinkweed Imp with this effect. At my end step, I'm going to draw a card. Oh, look, because I have Stinkweed Imp, I'm just going to Dredge. So, because I activated an ability. So then you're just going to get to go, oh, well, I don't think you get it again because it's at the end step, so you've got to do it, again in somebody's turn, activate that ability somehow. So you've got to have ways to keep activating that ability to keep getting value off it every turn. But if you can do that, then it's like, well, I'm going to get double that effect at every end step, basically, because now I've triggered that ability in my graveyard and I'm just going to do it again at the end step. So that seems very powerful. I'm not sure where else this can go, but I'm sure there's places where it can go. Maybe if you're like spell heavy deck, or if you are flashback / jump starting a lot of cards, if you've just got some zombies that you reanimate and whatnot. This is a zombie, so maybe it goes just in the zombie deck that you're just like reanimating all this stuff, so I'm not sure. But again, it does seem like it would have a home, but it's sort of hard to tell, isn't it? It's sort of, what more can you do with this? Like, I'm sure there's ways to break it if you have ways. Like, actually, I was just thinking, like, Howling Mine and things like this. Yeah, actually, just like Howling Mine. If you have Howling Mine out, oh, look, I have, again, Stinkweed Imp in my graveyard. At your upkeep, I'm going to dredge with Stinkweed Imp. There you go. And you're just like, oh, at your end step, by the way, because I activated an ability of a card being dredged, in your turn, at your end step, I'm just going to do that again, And that could be a really good way of, like, actually doing this whole, like, I'm going to mill myself for value, or I'm going to mill myself to basically win the game with Labman, Jace, Thassa's Oracle, things like that. Anyway, Sakashima's Protege. 4 double blue, 1/3 flash, and it has Cascade. So if you Cascade, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you find a non-land card that has a lesser CMC than the card that you cast. And then you cast that card for free. So when you cast Sakashima's Protege, or when it enters the battlefield, it can enter the battlefield as a copy of any permanent that entered the battlefield this turn. So when you Cascade, you can get the permanent that you played, a copy of that, or you can, if you're doing it at somebody's end step, which I assume you're probably doing, or maybe in their main phase, or what have you, something else, what have you, maybe even their combat, I'm not sure, but, it depends. You can get something that they have cast this turn. So you can copy their creature, you can copy their planeswalker, you can copy their enchantment, what have you, get value off of it, or just get that sort of quote-unquote free chump blocker, or you can copy your own thing that you've just cascaded into. So there's certainly things that you can do with this. Excuse me. I'm wondering if you should just run this primarily in like Cascade decks, just because of Cascade, but maybe it's just good enough to be a mono blue or just, clone card. It's just like gonna fit into the clone deck where you're just trying to clone everything possibly, and just get value off of cloning people's things, like just cascading for cloning somebody's thing. Okay, it's probably another clone, so I can clone something else, like that sounds alright. Just getting 2 clones for the price of 1 essentially seems alright. You can certainly get some good things off of it as well, so that it certainly has its applications. Brylan, the Moon Kraken, 6 double blue, 6/8. He has partner. When Brylan, Moonkraken, enters the battlefield, or whenever you cast a spell with CMC 6 or greater, you may return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Excuse me. So this is cheap bounce value. Well, not cheap bounce value, but it is cheap bounce value. So you cast this guy, you can bounce something, you cast something that is CMC 6 or greater, you can bounce something. Every time you cast something that's big, pretty big, you bounce something. So, yeah, I've seen like, what's the card? A lot of these sort of cards where you're bouncing things, like the blue-white one from M21. So, there's cards that are like that, and there's cards that are like the mono blue. I can't think of his name, but there's that other mono blue guy from M21 who bounces things as well. So maybe you're just like playing big stuff and bounce stuff, or you're maybe just playing bounce other people's stuff. You're playing this blue tempo style deck where you're trying to bounce all the things that everyone else is playing, so that you can slow the game down until you can get to your big, beaters and whatnot, and then start bouncing things when you cast CMC 6 or greater things, and just then you're able to sort of get in there with your 6/6s at people, or your big 6 mana or more things that probably have some, big power and toughness, just like Krakens, Leviathans, and such tribal, I think this could go into, or just big spell tribal this could go into as well. So it's got some play to it as well. Isior Ward Wing Familiar, sorry. 1 and a blue, 1/3 flyer, and it has partner. Whenever an opponent casts a spell that target one or more of your commanders, that spell costs 3 more to cast. So if they target one of your commanders, it costs 3 more. They target 2 of your commanders, it costs 6 more. Just punishes, but sort of slows people down from targeting your commanders. And your commanders are often things especially in certain decks that sort of get targeted, like Shulane. In that sort of deck, your commander often gets targeted so that you are slowed down because your main value engine is off Shulane. So, if people answer your commander too many times, then your deck's pretty much shut down. There's things that you can do with this, and there's ways that you can play it, but I think it's a little bit underpowered, to be honest. But still, it's, if it helped more of your cards, I think it'd be good. But I think this is a card that finds its way into very specific decks that actually really want to protect their commander. Ghost of Ramirez de Prezo, 2 and a blue, 2/3. He can't be blocked with creatures with toughness 3 or greater. When he deals combat damage combat damage to a player, choose up to 1 target card in a graveyard that was discarded or put there from a library this turn. That card, put that card into its owner's hand. And he also has partner. So I don't think you should rely on anyone milling you or anyone making you discard cards, because you want to get that value where you're just like, okay, I'm going to mill myself, or I'm going to discard my own cards or what have you, and then I'm going to get in with my somewhat unblockable boy here, and then just get those cards back to my hand for additional value. So I think you really want to build around this where you can freely discard things. I think red has the most sort of discard things. I don't think blue has many things to discard things. There are some things that in blue you discard things, and there's certainly a fair amount of stuff that makes you mill cards from your library. So this can get back instants and sorceries and creatures and planeswalkers, as long as they have been discarded or put into your graveyard from your library this turn. Again, I don't think you would ever really that much put this into a deck where, or unless you actually are in a deck that is group hug, but I wouldn't build a deck around this being kind of like group huggy, I guess. I don't know the better way to say it, but like, oh, you discarded a card. Oh, let me hit you for 2 damage, and I'll let you put it back into your hand. I don't think that, like, the political favour is there, but I don't think you should build around it. I think if it happens to come up, once in every blue moon or whatever, but again, it's also got to be on your turn, so I'm not 100% sure. So you're making people discard or mill it during your turn, and then you're making them get it back into their hand? I don't know about that. It's sort of like a bit weird. I think you want to be in control of your own cards and you want to get the value off of this. Or you want to perhaps use it in that way of saying, well, I am still using it in a group hug sort of way, but you're more saying to somebody, hey, look, alright, I've got this card in my graveyard. If you let me hit you for 2 damage or what have you, then I can get it back in my hand and I can deal with this other card that's on the field that's actually going to kill us. So maybe you could play it in that sort of way. I think that would actually be kind of cool. Glacian, Power Stone Ingenerator. 5 and a blue, 3/6. He has partner, tap him, tap X untapped artifacts we control. Look at the top X cards of our library. Put one of those cards into our hand, the rest add to our graveyard. Cool if we're playing like a lot of spammy artifacts. This might go into like the Emerys of the world and the Urzas of the world and things like that, where you're just like got a lot of artifacts. You're just playing mono blue artifacts and you just want a lot of cards that sort of care about artifacts and whatnot, and just like getting more cards in your hand. And if you can get cards back from your graveyard, that's good. So Emery would be really good with this as well, just getting cards back from your graveyard and whatnot, or getting artifacts from your back from your graveyard at least, because you really want to care about artifacts. Again, if you've got Urza, you're just able to tap your artifacts and make mana, and then you're able to get permanents into play anyway. So I think this is a lot worse than Urza, especially considering the CMC and the fact that he actually has to sort of untap during your untap step. Interesting, but maybe not that good. But maybe just like as a utility piece or a piece that goes into the 99 of another deck might be good. Malcolm, Keen-Eyed Navigator, 2 blue, 2/2 flyer. Whenever one or more pirates we control deal damage to one of our opponents, we create a treasure token for each opponent that was dealt damage, and he has partner. So I don't know whether this is just a pirate card or whether you just like running him and just doing stuff with him to sort of have that like myriad sword effect, like you're just trying to hit as many people as possible with your Malcolm. I actually saw someone playing that sort of deck where they're just basically hitting everyone every single turn with their Malcolm and just making a lot of treasures with their Malcolm. It was actually really good. But yes, just getting in there with this guy for 2 damage on turn 3 or 4, probably alright, and then making a treasure. If he stays out and makes you more treasures, or if you can get more pirates, or you got that myriad sword sort of style deck, or you're just hitting everyone sort of style deck, could be really good, get you a lot of treasure value. But I think he goes in the 99 of just a pirate deck, and you're just like getting free value off of hitting people with your pirates so that you get lots of treasure. His ability sort of has that haste then if you cast him this turn, and then you're just cracking in with your pirates. So, and if they have evasion, it's really good. So if you have some flying pirates or some trampling pirates, it's really good. But yeah, finds a place somewhere, I'm sure. Senani, Eye of the Storm, 3 and a blue, flyer with partner. When Siani attacks, scry X, where X is the number of attacking creatures with flying. So if he attacks by himself, we scry 1. He kind of works with that big Sphinx we were talking about before, where if we're scrying a bunch, then we're also drawing a bunch, which is good. You know, if we're scrying as well and just like getting free value off of scrying, this might be good enough. I'm not sure. You can certainly do some good stuff with scrying. You can get rid of a lot of bad cards. And if you can find a way to, again, take advantage of this, like if you've got that, commander that says when you scry, you draw, or if if that happens to be in this deck, it might be just as good. I'm not sure. But then again, this cares about flyers, so it is a little bit more wide-reaching, I guess, to a degree. And you just get that scribe value for free, I guess. So that's kind of cool. But I don't know. Do you really need to scry that much? And what can that kind of get you? That's the thing. Like, where can it actually get you? What can you actually do with it more so? I'm not 100% sure. It's sort of very hard to sort of figure that out unless there's more cards that actually say do X when you scry. Like, I don't think gaining life's probably the thing you want to do with it that much. But, if you scry a certain number, then you create a 2/2 flyer or something. Or if you scry, create a 1/1 flyer or whatever. Or do something, like, or draw a card like I was talking about. Or, and you get an additional scry or whatever. You scry twice. Scry doubling season. Basically, if you would scry, double that amount and things like that. But anyway, interesting stuff. Anyway, pretty much that is the end for this video. Coming out with the part 3. Very soon, as soon as I can. So stay tuned for that. I'm coming out with more videos, as many videos as I can, to get going what's happening here on the channel. Please help us out if you can help us out. Do all the YouTube things like share and subscribe. Support us on Patreon if you can. Lowest tier is $2 a month. It's very, very cheap to just get on the ground floor. I don't care if people are on the ground floor or where you're at. If you can afford just that little bit to help me out, get these videos looking as spiffy and as nice and as professional as possible, that's great. That's how it works. If I am getting money from you guys, then I can put more money into doing these videos for you. You can suggest things to me. You can send me deck lists. You can shoot me ideas for different videos and whatnot. All sorts of things over there on Patreon. You can join the Discord. There's all kinds of different perks that I'm working out for people on there. You get free cards once a month, up to the dollar limit that you're at. So there's just all sorts of perks over there on my Patreon. So go and check it out, and I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope you will join me for another one.